What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, sharing with you live on July 14th, 2019, a little bit after 2 p.m. Eastern Time, and we're continuing the Unpad Cross Country Conversation series. We do these once a month and for mainly Black Canadians, but you know what? It's for Africans all around the world, really and truly. We have one person I know, and the other person I know once in a while. We have Richard Sharp and Sarah Ayango here from Ottawa, and we're very happy to have both of them here sharing with us. So, first things first, as in the tradition of the Dr. Vibe shows, Sarah, can you share a little background about yourself? Because we do ladies first always.
I'm originally from Kenya, but I've been living in Quebec. Actually, I'm from the other side for a good 20 plus years. I'm a translator. That's my training, but I'm really a community media host and producer. That's what I do in English et en français.
That is good. And I just want to shout out Sean Osby, who has joined on Periscope. We have some people who have joined also via Periscope. But let's go to the other half of our conversation today. Mr. Richard Sharp, what's up? Tell us about yourself.
Not much. Not much. Just trying to keep myself out of trouble. Doing some work here in the community, here in the National Capital Region with the Black Hub. Also doing some really important work with the Federal Black Employee Caucus, a group of Black public servants that is organizing and doing quite well, blazing some trails in the public service, and doing some exciting work with respect to the UN Decade for People of African Descent. Very exciting times, seeing a lot of progress in short amounts of time. So it's all good. I'm based here in Ottawa, but I feel like a Pan-Africanist child of Canada, so all good.
No problem. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's watching live or on the replay or live on Get Vocal. Thank you, always Get Vocal, to make this happen. We're also live on YouTube. We're also live on the BIA media page on Facebook and also Periscope. So we've got a whole bunch of platforms covered. We're even live audio on Mixlr. If anyone would like to join the conversation via webcam or comments on Get Vocal, there's spots open for you. You can also, comments are being monitored on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Periscope. So we have all these platforms covered, and we have people on every one of the platforms right now. So that is fantastic. Let's get it going. We have a two-part conversation today. The first half of our conversation, we're going to talk about, do you have a Black hero or heroine? Why and who are they? And then the second part of the conversation this afternoon, we're going to talk about Black Canadian involvement in the upcoming federal election. So first things first, we're going to spend some time talking about a Black hero or Black heroine. And of course, I'm going to ask the lady first. Does she have someone in that light?
Well, I have some people. It's not going to take as long as you think because I just can't dissociate the two. On the African continent, my two heroines are actually Nobel Peace Prize laureates. Wangari Maathai, who is from Kenya, like myself, an environmentalist who spoke truth to power every chance she got and who empowered rural communities across our country and actually across the continent with her approach to environmental conservation. Then there's Lema Bowie from Liberia, who has been an advocate for women and girls who are victims of violence and economic disempowerment in that country and across the continent. In Canada, my heroines are all the women who came to Canada under the West Indian domestic scheme in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And those women have really been the backbone of many of our Caribbean communities in a time when Canada had very discriminatory anti-Black immigration policies. So those are mine.
Richard, how about yourself?
Mine is maybe not as mine is pretty, I guess, famous guy that everybody knows. Mine is Malcolm X. I really like and has gravitated towards Malcolm X, not necessarily because of his early work with the Nation of Islam, but the work that he did after he basically transformed himself. He really demonstrated a great capacity to be able to, like he was fighting for justice and fighting for the rights, human rights of Black people, people of African descent in the United States during the 60s. But he really did a huge transformation for himself in terms of how he saw other people, how he saw that we could have whites as allies, that the Jewish community was not the enemy. He really pushed the movement to a place where it helped to internationalize the struggles that people of African descent had in the United States of America. And there has not been very many people other since him, perhaps maybe Nelson Mandela, that has really transcended his country or his or her country and pushed the issue of human rights for Blacks on the international stage. I'm quite struck by his sort of rags to international prominence. Yeah, rags to international prominence, rise from so-called criminal to basically a statesman for the Black community, and a bridge between two very important religious communities, the Muslims and Canadians. His life was cut short. His life was cut short, considerably short. But what he was able to accomplish in that short amount of time was quite remarkable. So that's one of the things that inspire me. The ability to change and the ability to change one's point of view and perspective based on your experiences is probably one of the greatest learnings that I had from that man.
Okay. All right. A question: is it good, especially for our young? We're speaking to hopefully a Black audience. We're speaking to a Black audience. I was going to say Black Canadian, but it's a Black audience because we're worldwide right now. Is it good, especially for our young Black men and women, to have heroes? And is it more challenging to find good heroes these days for the Black community?
Well, it's important for them to have role models. More than heroes, I would say role models, and so that they don't get a sense that there's some sort of vacuum and that their ancestors or elders, like what they're thinking of doing today and right now, is really revolutionary and nothing was done before that. There really is a lot of um, there are many historical vacuums that can be filled with role models slash heroes. So, for example, in the environmental realm, all you see is these white women and white people, environmentalists being celebrated everywhere. And so young Black people may not here, especially in North America, may not necessarily sort of see themselves in those people. Yet there are Black environmentalists in North America, in the US and in Canada, and in Latin America who are right there and who have been doing this work even before these white environmentalists came to prominence. So that's why Wangari Maathai to me is someone all Black young men and women should know in terms of how she challenged the society she came from, a very patriarchal society that looked down on her because she was not a conventional woman. I mean, she was the first woman to get a chemistry degree or a physics degree or whatever from a university in East Africa back when, first of all, women tended not to be going to university, let alone in STEM fields. That's another thing, right? And then the environmental issue, she took that up before it was sexy. Like she was dealing with desertification, tree planting, the economic impacts on rural communities across the continent. She was doing that before, UNEP was a thing and people were talking about climate change. She was talking about climate change back then. So it's important to look at these people, but also to look at the people that are right in their face, in their community. So people in the United States dealing with, the food deserts and urban urban farming, initiatives and greening of buildings in um, uh, quote unquote difficult neighborhoods and things like that. They really need, yeah, to have people that they can look up to and to inspire them and to fire up their imagination and to give them encouragement. Because if they see that someone before them did it despite the humiliation and difficulties, etc. Oui, ben, je vais parler en français quand même. Pour les francophones qui sont là, c'est très important pour nos jeunes hommes, des femmes noires, d'avoir des modèles plus que des héroïnes et des héros, des gens qui sont accessibles, des gens qui sont là dans leur présent, dans leur milieu, qui peuvent les inspirer à soit prendre des initiatives ou continuer des initiatives qu'ils ont déjà commencées. Parce que s'ils voient que dans le passé, il y a des Noirs, des écologistes, des défenseurs des droits des femmes, des droits des autochtones, etc., qui ont réussi malgré les obstacles et les défis, ben, ça c'est le courage qu'ils ont pour continuer, pour persévérer.
Richard, before I get to you, oh, no, I'll parking lot what I was going to ask. I'll let you go on that too. Do you think that especially young blacks, male and female, should have heroes?
Yeah, I think that it's wonderful to have people to look up to, people that are inspiring. Like we have athletes that are inspiring. Uh, uh, I agree with Sarah that we should have role models, people that help build well-rounded, intelligent, and capable human beings to be able to maneuver this crazy world. There's a lot to be said about setting young people up for unrealistic expectations. I remember back in the day in the 80s, and I'm dating myself how old I really am. Back in the day when Michael Jordan was doing his thing, the thing was like, be like Mike. And nobody's going to be like Mike. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player that ever lived. So you can't tell a child to go out and be like Mike because he or she is not going to be like Mike. They're going to be that person. So how can we bring out people that are going to be the best human beings that they can be, irrespective of the fact that there are other people that are attaining these amazing things. We all want our children to do amazing things, but oftentimes our children just want to be themselves, and that should be okay in terms of how we raise them. So I would say that heroes are great for inspiration. Like Kawhi Leonard, he looks like my nephew. He's just a foot taller, but he looks dead on my nephew. But I'm not saying that anybody in my family is going to be like Kawhi Leonard because he is. We need to.
Yeah.
He's an exceptional human being in terms of what he's able to do with the basketball and with his footwork and all that. But we can be inspired by that and go out and play basketball, have fun, and so on. But not. So heroes, we need to put heroes in their rightful place as inspirational leaders, but not that we need to aspire to be just like them.
Okay, Sarah, when the last you spoke, you said something I think that's very interesting. What is the difference between a role model and a hero? Is there a difference?
I would say um, the how high, like the pedestal, the height of the pedestal, to me is the difference because the hero is very much that whole there's a myth, there's a mythology around a hero that you don't necessarily have around a role model, right? And then there are people who are a combination of hero, heroine, and role model. Someone who falls into that category for me, Jean Augustine, the Honorable Jean Augustine, who came here as under the domestic scheme, an educator, a passionate educator, but who has gone on to do the most incredible things, including being the first Black woman elected to the House of Commons, and then the Fairness Commissioner, and then so many different initiatives that have to do with racial equality and equity, not just in the education system, but also uh, government. you know. So yeah, I'd say the height of the pedestal. Alors la hauteur du piédestal, pour moi, c'est ça un peu la différence entre modèle et héros.
Fantastic, Richard. Do you piggyback with what was just said about the difference between a hero and a role
Yeah,
model?
yeah. Role models are heroes are like oftentimes up in the sky.
Oh yeah,
they're
inaccessible.
yeah, they're far away, and role models oftentimes are people that you can access. And so I want to be a role model for my
Yeah.
kids, right? So they can see me, they can talk to me, they can hear about my failures, right? They can see that I'm human. They can pinch me, I can hurt, right? So heroes sometimes have this almost godlike status that they have done no wrong, and we know that some of our leaders were not perfect. But we don't talk about that when we talk about heroes. So yeah, I think that role models are down to earth, the people that are accessible, they're present in people's lives in a way that makes it real, and that people can emulate in real terms. I think of people in my own life, like my mom was a role model for raising us 6 kids. She worked her butt off, sometimes 2 jobs to raise us. And so we reciprocated that. I'm the oldest of my 6 siblings, so I helped take care of them like my mom took care of us. That was easy to model because I was there and that was my lived experience. So I think that's what the difference is, really.
Excellent. I just want to shout out. Got a pile of people watching on YouTube, and thank you so much. If you have any questions or comments for Sarah or Richard, or just general comments, please type them in on YouTube. Also got Get Vocal working. We've also got Periscope working, going strong. So please feel free to put in your comments or jump in. Uh, for both of you, do you feel Black Canada is lacking in heroes, or we're not realizing the great heroes we've had in Canadian
We're
history?
not lacking at all. On n'en manque pas. Des héros noirs au Canada, il y en a. En fait, ils sont plus nombreux qu'on le pense. There are more of them than you think. Another hat I wear in this community is as spokesperson for Black History Ottawa. And every year we celebrate our Black Canadian. We focus on Canadians, specifically for this very reason you are bringing up, because we get, Black History Month in a lot of our communities across the country, except maybe Southern Ontario and Nova Scotia, is going to be about some American hero or some Caribbean hero or some African hero, right? Uh, for whatever reason. And so here in Ottawa, we've chosen specifically to focus on the Canadian one. So we are going to be talking about a Walter Peters, a trailblazer in the Canadian Forces, in the Air Force, with the Snowbirds, etc. We're going to focus on Dr. Stephen Blizzard, another trailblazer and hero to an entire community of Vietnamese. Like that's hero right there. He was that doctor on that ship in Malaysia that cleared all of those 4,000 that came here to Ottawa. That's a hero, and that's a Canadian hero, originally from Trinidad. But who in Canada knows this outside of his community and outside of aviation enthusiasts? Not enough people. So they're here, and just because we don't hear about them, in fact, we should make it our job to notice who's missing. So in the sciences, in medicine, there are these American heroes and these British Black ones. Where are the Canadian ones? Research it. You'd be amazed at what you will find.
Richard, where do Black Canadians make the start for this? Is it at our homes? Are we trying to push the education system? Where's the best place to start for this push?
All of the push to establish role models and to put heroes in their rightful place, like the work that Sarah is doing, it does begin at home. At home with families, however you define your family, all kinds of different kind of families these days. It has to do with how we worship in our churches and synagogues, mosques, and so on. It does have to do with how we engage with the education system, not to leave the education system to raise our children. If we do so, our children will think that this is a white country and that we make no real significant contributions. So role models and heroes and people that inspire our children, we need to make sure that schools and school boards incorporate that into how they operate in terms of how we get people employed. Right? We have people in the federal public service. We have Black executives in public service. Are they reaching back to help to bring up other public servants to positions of esteem, and power, and influence? I have a role model. You know, my director in my department, who's since retired, a guy named Dennis Wade, to bring in a whole bunch of Black people into the federal public service and train them and guide them and give them advice. Never a closed door. Like I saw that when I was a mid-level analyst before I became a senior analyst. Like, okay, this is the kind of executive I want to be. So those kinds of things start at home, and then they move into other milieux, like education and our workplaces, places of worship. And then I think you see change. You see critical mass for this kind of thing. Any kind of change, you see critical mass. You have it in pockets in different places, but initially it's at home, it's around the dinner table or on the couch when you've got the kids for a minute. Who's inspiring you, and you can try to be that inspiration in as small a way as you can, as a parent, as a guardian, older brother, cousin. So that's how I see it.
Sarah, since you are Ms. Ottawa Media, I've been told, Ms. You're the media hub of Ottawa. How much have you seen a change over your journey about the education of Black heroes, heroines in Canadian culture? Because you've been involved in the Ottawa Mosaic for a long period of time. Are you seeing changes over your journey about getting this message and information
Oh,
out?
absolutely. In the last 10, 15 years alone. And I've noticed that it has um, the showcasing of Black Canadian historical figures, heroes, heroines, and role models has increased as the number of Blacks in newsrooms and on editorial teams has increased as well. So let me give you an example of examples of some of the incredible initiatives. And I'm really pleased to see that our public broadcaster that we paid for has been really sort of driving this change. So Emily Mills, shout out to my girl Emily Mills over there in Toronto when she was still with CBC. She had that series on Black women change makers uh, in Canada. We also have Asha Tomlinson of CBC, who had that Black in Canada series, which was very eye opening for a lot of people, including some of my white colleagues in mainstream media. And of course, what has helped to really disseminate the information is technology. As because I remember I started this work in the early 90s. We did not have YouTube. We didn't have, we didn't have the kind of online presence and exposure that we have now. And I've found that technology has really helped not just to showcase our stories, our history, our people, their contributions and achievements, but it's also helped connect up those of us who do this work of, the research, like Kathy Grant with Legacy Voices and Black Military History, connect her up with people out in Vancouver and in Nova Scotia, etc. It's helped us, historical society, oui, des patients français pour le francophone. Euh, je crois qu'avec la révolution technologique qui s'est opérée depuis les 20 dernières années, on a vraiment vu une expansion de, comment dire, un accroissement de la diffusion de toutes nos histoires, des contributions de nos gens, etc. Euh, Vraiment de façon sans précédent. C'est vraiment la technologie qui nous a aidés, mais aussi la soif de savoir, the thirst for knowledge, because people were questioning where are the indigenous people and where are the black people, in all of these narratives about Canada. And I also find that je trouve aussi qu'avec tout le questionnement autour de l'identité canadienne, qu'est-ce que l'identité canadienne? Les gens ont commencé à comprendre que oui, nous les Noirs, il faut aussi qu'on fasse valoir notre place. We also have to demand our place in this narrative about Canadian identity. And that has pushed a lot of the work that many of our different organizations have done.
Excellent. Sarah, I'm going to ask a favor. Can you move a little bit closer to Richard so we get all of you in? Oh, isn't that nice? Okay, that's a bit so we get all of you in. Want to get all of you. There you go. Richard, same conversation piece for you. Are you seeing a change when it comes to recognizing Black Canadian heroes and heroines over the last number of years?
Yes. Principally because of the UN Decade for People of African Descent and its adoption by various levels of government, adoptions by school boards. We're pressing to have the UN Decade adopted in the Federal Public Service. It's put everything about being Black out in the forefront. And so we're seeing it in the media, as Sarah has been saying, that some people that have been supporting stories about Blacks. Adrian Harewood providing a lot of space for us. And I think, and Sarah alluded to it both in English and French, we can't understate the power of what you're doing with the Dr. Vibe show and this platform. We're able to actually, one of the first times in history, to control our own voice and our own media and to reach people on our own without the need for mainstream media in some cases. We not supplant, but we add to existing media. The BIA media here in Ottawa is establishing capacity to be able to be this centralized place to be able to showcase black media, entertainment, politics, you name it. So it's a huge transformation over the course of a number of years. It's very exciting. It's why I take time out of my Sundays to come and be part of this work instead of sitting on my deck, sipping my
cold brew,
my ting on my deck.
Oh, you're right, Stripe.
Oh yeah, red stripe or ting. It's like you need to be part of this. It's a wonderful thing to have so many people engaged online, and for us to be talking. We're talking about things that are relevant to the Black community. It's great to have this kind of power in our hands, knowledge and expertise, skill to be able to reach our people and share these messages.
I want to ask you. There's a phrase I always use, and I want you to tell me what you think when I share this. But it is very important for Black Canadians to control their narrative. What does that mean when I share that? So, Sarah, what does that mean to you, seeing Black Canadians control their narrative?
So, for example, Richard has referenced the UN Decade for People of African Descent. Myself, my focus is media, because a lot of Canadians who are not Black, a lot of their the imagery around the Black experience and Black people c'est véhiculé dans les médias par les médias. Et moi, je m'intéresse surtout à nos diffuseurs publics. I'm specifically interested in our public broadcasters and our taxpayer-funded media, who are supposed to reflect all of Canada back to Canadians, the good and bad, and not to present imagery that is unbalanced and that is just too negative and serves one community's sense of superiority, moral and otherwise. And so controlling the narrative for myself and some of my friends who are doing the same work, means you see something on CTV or CBC or whatever, and you do a letter writing campaign. Uh, if you're forward like me, you actually physically show up and try to find out, okay, who are the producers for this show or whatever. And then you tell them, listen, in our community, we don't appreciate that all you show is this, 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 and this. Here are alternatives to that narrative. If you are willing, some of us are willing to work with you because we already do the work in the community, telling stories through our community media. So that's another message I'd like to get across to our communities. Don't overlook community media because those narratives, yes, we do control. And believe it or not, mainstream media, because they don't want to hire us to do the work, they're going to look to us, to Black community media across this country, to get those stories they otherwise are not able to get because our people do not trust them. Donc, les médias communautaires sont très importants. Ils jouent un rôle clé dans cette question du contrôle du discours et des images véhiculées au sujet des Noirs, de leurs expériences, de leur vécu et de leur contribution à l'édification de ce pays.
Fantastic. We're beginning to widen down on this segment, but Richard, is there anything you want to add to what Sarah has just eloquently described?
Yes, yes. And of course I have to agree. I agree with everything. It's all the time.
I paid him.
I have to agree. Again, having that kind of power allows us to be able to tell our own story, as you were saying, Dr. Vibe. It also allows us to be able to counter fake news about us that's in the mainstream media. So we can come back and say, this is what the story really is from the perspective of our communities, our families, our people. This is what's really important when it comes to education, criminal justice, and so on. This is what carding really feels like, right? And why it's a human rights violation. And maybe why people are feeling comfortable that the cops are on the street, but I need to worry about whether my kids are going to get roughed up when they walk into school, right? So having these kinds of control of media to be able to share those kinds of stories puts us out there into the Canadian space in a different kind of way. So this is an authentic voice, our authentic voice. And unless you have a critical mass of Black people in mainstream media, and this is growing, right? This is growing in terms of fresh, real media type stuff. It's like this is definitely where I think a lot of people see the future. So our people need to be in touch with how to access it and really make a good go of it.
Fantastic. And we went a little bit off topic, but medium control is also important about media exposing and education about history. So even though Richard and Sarah are talking about like media control today or media dominance, that's not only just for today, but also what's happened in the past, because there's a lot of Black Canadian history that we're just now exposing, and a lot of it has to be our own work. We can't count on other platforms, non-Black based, to do it. We've got
and our media personalities can become our champions and our role models as well, right? Mm-hmm. So Dr. Vibe's role in accessing the community is huge, right? Those of us who speak on behalf of the community is huge and important.
It's interesting you were mentioning, Sarah, you were mentioning Emily Mills. That was actually her and I were interviewed back to back on a platform a few weeks ago. And another great gentleman who's a great champion, a gentleman named Dwight Drummond, who is, out of CBC Toronto. And I ran into him a few weeks ago. He has been in the media for 30 years.
Yes. No, and there's Marcy Ian as well.
Marcy Ian, yes, I remember. I go back. I knew Marcy before she got into media, so that's a whole other conversation. But we're going to transition to our next conversation. Our next conversation topic is about the next federal election in Canada. It's on October 21st. And I know even though it's probably nice weather in Ottawa, it's very nice weather in Toronto today. The election is coming around the corner and we cannot forget about it, because once September hits, folks, it's going to be all over. But people are probably being bombarded by election stuff right now. And we're just going to be giving a call to, hopefully, we're going to get in touch with a gentleman named Ian Allen, who's a member of Operation Black Vote Canada. And he's going to be joining us via phone. So we're just going to give him a call to make sure we get a hold of him. And he'll join our conversation.
Hello.
Ian Allen, is that you, sir?
It is me. How are you doing, Dr. Viden?
I am blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. Thank you for taking time out of a beautiful weather Toronto Sunday afternoon.
I wouldn't have it any other way. This is an important discussion, and I'm glad to be on the show.
Fantastic. Well, we are joined, you're live via audio. We also have on our screen, we have Sarah and Richard from Ottawa. So do say hello to
Hello,
Mr. Allen.
bonjour.
Hey, Alan.
Hello, Sarah and Richard. How you guys doing?
Good.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
Yes, unfortunately, we couldn't get Ian on via visual wise, but I found a way of getting him on audio wise. So that's the next best thing. So, Ian, before we get into talking about the upcoming federal election, can you give a little background about Operation Black Vote Canada for our viewers and listeners all around the world?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, Operation Black Vote Canada was founded back in 2004. We had our relaunch a couple of years back, and we are a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to educating and motivating Black Canadians to be involved and engaged in all elements of our politics. That's municipal level, provincial level, and federal. And I just want to highlight the multi-partisan element of what we do. We are involved in every major party because we know that in our country, provincially, federally, there are long stretches where you've got one party in control, whether it be the Conservatives under Stephen Harper in the last stint, reaching nearly 10 years, or the provincial Liberals for 15 years here in Ontario. We have to make sure that regardless of who wields the levers of power in our country, that the Black community is at the table, regardless of who is in charge. And so that's what we do. We are involved in putting on workshops, hosting community events. We'll get a chance to get into some of our highlights, like our provincial and municipal debates later on in the show. But essentially, we want to make sure we're a conduit for information. We're training people who want to be involved in our politics, and we're getting our community engaged at every level.
Excellent. How did you get involved with the organization?
Well, I'm our entire board, for the most part, has been involved in government and in politics in a variety of fashions, provincially, federally, municipally, in every party. I am a Conservative staffer. I've worked for Minister Jason Kenney in a previous stint out in Ottawa. I worked for Ontario's Leader of the Official Opposition, and currently I serve as Senior Communications Advisor to the Honourable Greg Rickford here in Ontario, Minister of Energy. I was approached by our board chair, Donald Morgan, in trying to rebuild our organization, stressing the importance of getting our community involved. We see a great deal of involvement from other communities in our province and country. To name a few, we have our South Asian friends and partners who are actively engaged. We have our proud and historic Canadian Chinese community who's very much engaged. And, you know, we've been at the forefront of our country's moral development. We've made social contributions going back before Confederation. And so it's time for us now to stand up and to take our rightful place in our country's politics. And when Velma came to me and discussed what her vision was for our organization, I couldn't say no. I had to be involved. And so today I'm proud to serve as OBVC's vice chair.
Excellent. And Richard and Sarah, please feel free to ask questions, conversation topic, add on. I don't want to be the driver of this conversation. Do you have any questions for Ian at the present moment?
Yeah, j'avais une question en français. I have a question.
Well, sorry to interrupt, Dr. Bob. I can't hear Richard or Sarah, just to let you know. No, I can't. I'm only hearing you right now.
Oh, okay. I thought that that's strange. You were you hearing them? Were you hearing them a few moments
No,
ago?
that's why I jumped. No, that's why I jumped in and decided to say a quick hello. I can't hear either of the two.
Okay, so
No.
So, Dr. Vibe, can you hear us?
Maybe you can pass the
My
questions back.
question
Yeah,
would
okay.
be the
So
extent of Operation Black Vote Canada's activities in Quebec and French-speaking Canada, because there really is a problem with the what is it, voter education on the French side in the Black community.
okay, so the question, Ian, is the extent and reach of your organization in Quebec, because Sarah's saying there seems to be a lack of
Mhm.
reach of your organization when it comes to education of Black voters in the Quebec
French,
region. Could
French.
you answer to that?
Sure.
And
So we are
and in French, particularly in the French language.
okay. Well, what we are a national organization. We've got, and we'll talk about some of our programs and the reach and some of the feedback we're getting from places as far as Nova Scotia and Alberta and other places we're expanding. When it comes to Quebec, we have a national vision, obviously. This is Operation Black Vote Canada, not just Ontario, not just representing Atlantic Canada, but for the entire. Doing currently is we're making plans. We're reaching out to organizations and we're discussing how we can become more engaged, particularly before the federal election, but then going forward as well. This is not a one-shot deal. We're not only interested in the 2019 federal election. We weren't only interested in the 2018 provincial and municipal election. So we're building the foundation to make sure that we are represented in every single province, in every community where we have sizable populations of Black community. And so we're actively engaging and reaching out to folks to make sure that we are represented all across our country. And so look out and stay tuned for some great events coming out of Quebec. We'll talk about some of the things we're doing in other provinces and how we can replicate that success to our neighbors to the east.
Okay, fantastic. Do you
Oh,
have...
and one more point. One of our key board members as well, who used to work for the leader of the official opposition, Honorable Andrew Scheer, Damar, is fluent in French. So we're making sure we're expanding our linguistic reach to ensure that we are communicating in both official languages, and she's a great addition to our board as well.
Okay, fantastic. Richard, do you have any conversation piece at the moment? I certainly can continue on, but do you have anything you need?
Yeah,
like that?
I'm really interested in hearing a bit more about the multi-partisan approach of Operation Black Vote. As everybody knows, Blacks vote in almost every under almost every political stripe. So just wanted a bit more on the nonpartisanship of the work.
Okay, so the question is from Richard Ian. He's asking about the multi-partisan approach of your organization and how do you make that happen?
Great question, Richard. First of all, this is stressing the importance. Like I said before, we need to make sure that regardless of who is in charge provincially, federally, across our country, that we have a seat at every table to make sure that there's never a period where we're locked out. And so I guess a good place to start would be to talk about our board. Our board is comprised of members from every single major political party. And that's in recognition both of the fact that some parties have more work to do than others, but that as well, we can never sleep. We can never allow complacency to essentially give one party a sense that they will have our vote forever. So we have to be diverse. We have to make sure we are furthering the Black agenda in the Conservative Party, in the Liberal Party, the Green Party, the NDP, as well as for independents who don't have a home in any particular party. And so that's where the strategic focus comes from. When it comes to our events, for instance, just last weekend, we hosted, in partnership with all major four political parties, the 2019 campaign and election seminar. And that brought out representatives from all four major parties to engage with our community, how to get involved in campaigns, where opportunities exist. We were fortunate to have the backing of Elections Canada that share tools and resources on running, on working, registering, voting in our federal elections. And so what this tells me is that the parties are willing to engage. What we want to be is that link between government, between political parties, and our community. And again, this is across every party, provincially, every party, federally, and we want to make sure that they have an opportunity to speak to our community on our terms. And we'll talk about some other events as we continue as well. where we give them the opportunity to come and meet with us, to take questions from us, listen to our concerns, and present solutions to some of the problems facing our community.
Excellent. Questions are starting to come in steady now, which is excellent from the YouTube platform. Robin Brown has a question saying, how does your organization measure success?
That's a great question. There's a number of metrics of success, and I guess we'll talk for a moment about some of our the meetings we recently had with all of our major parties. Over the course of the past several months, we sat down with the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, with Opposition Leader Andrew Scheer, Conservative Leader Andrew Scheer, with NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh, with Elizabeth May of the Green Party. And we talked about issues facing our community and stressed to them the importance of meaningful engagement with the Black community. So let's talk about some of the things we were looking for them. We called on all federal parties to expand the number of Black candidates. And we're talking about winnable ridings. Anybody can put a candidate up from the Black community in a riding where you're not expected to win. That does us no good. We want to make sure that we're putting forward candidates that can actually make it to Queen's Park, make it to the to Parliament Hill, make it to provincial legislatures across the country, so that they can enact our agenda in positions of power. We talked to the major parties about increasing the number of Black employees in senior positions in their respective offices to make sure that when policy is being discussed, when stakeholders are being engaged, that we're there. We talked also about working toward the appointment of more Black deputy ministers within the federal public service. People are not always aware, but a lot of the activity, a lot of the planning and execution of the priorities takes place in the deputy minister's offices. So we want to make sure that we're there as well. And when we start to see more of our community reflected in decision makers, in decision-making power and authority across our country, and we start to see more Black candidates nominated in all federal parties and provincial parties, that's where we're going to be able to measure our metric of success. And we actually start to go from talking about this to execution. But we have to lay the groundwork first, and that's what we're in the process of doing in the last election, provincially, municipally, and in our upcoming federal election in October.
I have a question, Ian. When you first go out to community organizations, how has their knowledge of politics or activism, wanting to get involved in politics, changed during the journey of this organization? Do you see more, how can I say, more wanting to be engaged in the political process now than when you started?
Yes, and that's a great question, Dr. Vibe. I think you can look at it from two different perspectives. On the one hand, you have the willingness and desire, and I'll give you some anecdotes in a minute, of people wanting to be engaged. The question is how, and that's where we step in. We need to be able to make sure that our community understands where opportunities exist. For instance, for our young people, we have our youth summit where we're talking about internships. We're providing literature pieces on where the parties stand on different issues in terms of engagement, making sure that our young people are connected to opportunities to intern and get in on the ground level in terms of volunteering. We talk about, for instance, the different dinner and politics events that we've been hosting, a series of events across the province where people are able to host events in their home to talk about issues, to strategize, to brainstorm. The mere fact that we have so much eagerness, the fact that we have so many people turning out at our events it goes to show that people want to be involved. All they need is the information. And the more information we provide, the more events we host, is the more excited people get. It's the more we have people turning out, and it's self-perpetuating. It builds on itself. It has a snowball effect. For example, we were talking internally about when we would wrap up our dinner and politics series. It's impossible. Every single time we have more events, we have more people looking to host events. And we host an event, we have 5, 10 more people saying, how can I get involved? How can I host this? What do I have to do? What sort of information can I share? And people are eating it up. And so the more we're engaged, the more we're on the ground, is the more we see the community wanting to be involved. And it hasn't stopped. It just keeps on increasing. And we're excited by it. It energizes us, and it's going to propel us forward in the weeks and months ahead.
Ian, before I let anyone else jump in, I want to ask, you mentioned about the dinner and politics. I'm aware of it. Maybe Sarah and Richard are, but What about our general audience? Talk about what Dinner in Politics is all about and the positive impact it's had.
Sure. It is a really and truly a grassroots effort and engagement like I've never seen. We've got people who are opening up their homes or arranging a place to meet, to break bread, to discuss issues of the day, to talk about how to be more involved. We have a sitting member currently, Selena Siobhan from Whitby, an independent member of parliament, who just hosted a great event just a couple days ago. We have one of our talented young board members who is in charge of our youth coordination, Joseph Smith. He opened up his home and had dozens of young people who came out, who were discussing issues that are affecting our community from a youth perspective, talked about how to get more involved, talked about how to get more engaged, talked about the importance of being at the table, and about casting ballots. And so it really is an organic sort of effort that's sprouting up all across the country, Nova Scotia, Alberta. We talked about Quebec earlier. We're going to be hosting a number of events and coordinating a number of events out there as well, where people can just come together, talk about their experiences, share their experiences, talk about what they can do on an individual level to get people involved and engaged. And it's sprouting up. We can't stop. We talked about bringing it to a close, and every single time we do, we have more people reaching out saying, how can I get in on this? What else can I do? And quite frankly, it's refreshing. It's a boost of energy, and it's going to be an ongoing series that takes place whether we're in an election year or not. This is something that can't be slowed down.
Sarah, Rich,
London,
go ahead.
As well, London and in Hamilton, across the GTA, other provinces, in the east and the west. We hosted in Winnipeg. This is it really is a grassroots effort at engagement like I've never seen. So just for your listeners out there, and if you're interested, we'll be able to provide lots of information about how folks can host one of these such events in their community as well.
Richard, Sarah, want to add in?
I want to know about the any myths surrounding Black voter participation, like the participation of Black voters in Canadian elections. What are the myths that you have been able to dispel through your program?
Okay, so Ian, the question from Sarah is, has your organization been able to hear about and destroy any myths about the Black Canadian voter in your organization's work?
Yes, and that's a great question, Sarah. I think there has been a general idea that we as a community don't vote, and I think that misperception has caused some parties maybe to stay away from engaging with us because they don't see a political value. The reality is we are involved. It's shown not only, and let me give you an example, for instance. I think once parties engage with us and they get a chance to see that this is fruitful soil that they're planting their seeds in, they're going to be more willing to do so. We hosted 2 historic events in the last cycle, provincially and municipally, last year in April and October of 2018. We hosted the very first ever provincial Black community leaders debate, where we had the sitting premier of Ontario at the time participate with other party leaders to take questions from the audience, to listen to us, to engage with us, and to get our feedback on various policy points. That was attended by 500 people. Never before in the history of provincial debate, much excitement and involvement in the community at any level, regardless of whether it's coming from ethnic communities or just the general population. We had 500 people show up and pack a house, no seats, standing room only, at the end of that debate. We turned around in October, did it again, municipally, had the sitting mayor, John Tory, our current mayor, attend with other candidates from the community. We had over 300 people attend. If you're talking about a community that's apathetic or that doesn't want to be engaged, you wouldn't see that sort of involvement. You wouldn't see the success we're seeing in dinner and politics. You wouldn't see the success of our youth initiatives with people coming out, or our Black Women Political Summit, or the Next Generation Youth Summit, or our municipal boot camp, where we had tons of candidates or people who are expressing interest in running coming out. And so we are destroying the myth. And the more we continue to do so and allow parties to see that this is a worthwhile endeavor, you're going to see more of it. Our vision is that every single election cycle, the debate circuit is something that leaders have to attend. That when we sit down and ask for a meeting to discuss various issues of because there's going to be a political. Not only is it important, but let's be real for a second. We're talking about politics, and politicians obviously, aren't always motivated to work outside of self-interest. Once parties see that there is an electoral benefit to engaging our community, whether it be in the East End, in Whitby, and in Durham region, or out here closer to where I live in Mississauga and Brampton, other areas. Once leaders and parties see that there's a political benefit to engaging our community, they'll be more willing to do so. And we have shown, and over the course of the last number of months and years, that we are looking for a seat at the table, and that we have to be engaged on our terms and we're seeing the benefits of that. So we are breaking down myths, and we're seeing the benefits of it as a concept.
Excellent. Got another question here from Robin Brown. He's asking, how effective is social media in your organization's activities, and how has your organization responded to the possibility of misinformation targeted at influencing the upcoming federal election? That's a really good point, because there are media reports coming up, and we're hearing and seeing about bots and things like that in regards to misinformation, aka what happened in the last American presidential election.
No, great question. We'll tackle the social media element first. Much of our information in terms of logistics, promoting interest in our different events is done through social media. We've got great folks on the board who are well versed in social media tools, who are reaching out to people. That's how we get the sort of turnout that we do at our various events that we put on for the community. So social media can't be understated. And as we continue to go through the federal election cycle, getting feedback from our Dinner and Politics series, talking about some of the points that came out of our meetings, we're going to be using social media more and more to disseminate information. In terms of misinformation, I think that the best defense, is a good offense. And if we're the ones promoting our own narrative, if we're the ones talking about the sort of success that we're seeing, talking about important issues of value to us, we don't leave that room and that space for others to define those issues for us. And so taking a proactive approach, making sure that we are, always communicating with community members, talking about issues that are facing our community in terms of representation. That way, we don't leave space for those who have, mischievous ends to come in and define us, in ways that don't serve the truth. So we have to be vigilant, obviously. We have to make sure that we learn the lessons that our friends to the south have been experiencing, and like everything that could be used for a force for good, could also be used for negative ends. And so we have to make sure that we're staying on top of social media, making sure that we're promoting our own agenda and using our own voice, so that people can't define us, essentially.
Great. Sarah, Richard.
Just a couple of things. Dr. Vibe, I'd like you to pass on. Is Ian still can't hear us?
No, for some reason he can't hear
so
us.
First,
I'm passing on anything you're sharing. Go ahead.
Great initiative for Dinner and Politics. We've been hearing about these engagements, and they've been fantastic. Great grassroots effort.
So first off, Richard would just like to share with you, Ian, with you and your organization, a fantastic initiative in regards to the Dinner and Politics. They have heard nothing but outstanding stuff as a result of these conversations.
That's excellent. We're so glad to hear that. And that's, this is what we live for. It's twofold. It's hearing things like that, and then seeing the sort of positive response on the ground. And like I said before, not to beat a dead horse, but we can't turn this off. We're getting feedback and questions, and I'm sure even a consequence of this show, we're going to get more requests coming into info@obvc.ca. We're going to be getting more requests for how people can host these in their communities, and it's such an easy initiative. All it takes is someone willing to open up the space, provide some refreshments, and get the word out. And then the conversations take place organically. And then when you attend one of those such events, you're inspired now to host your own, and it has a snowball effect. So we thank you for that feedback and for that encouragement. The fact that we have elected members who are looking to host these events in their communities is a testament to its success. And it really just goes to show that we've got, I think, three really key things going for us as an organization. We have great leadership at the top. We have a board chair, Velma Morgan, who's dedicated. She's leveraging her political experience in making things happen for this organization. We've got an excellent board full of energetic people from different parties, different political persuasions, who all come together for one common vision, and that is to see us take our politics as a community in politics, in government. And number three, I think the most important, and it goes to a question that was asked before, is that we have a community that is eager to be involved, eager to be engaged. You can have all leadership that you want. You could have an energetic board all day, but if the community is not responding and coming out to events and showing their engagement, it's all for naught. And that is one thing we have not had to struggle with. We have people coming out from different regions, driving to our capital city, just really wanting to be engaged. Like I said before, 500 people at our provincial debate, largest ever attended debate, 300 plus at the municipal debate, people coming out for Women in Politics series, for a municipal boot camp, folks coming out to volunteer, to learn how to get more involved with our parties at our campaign seminars. That's the most important key, is keeping the community engaged and involved. And without that, we're spinning our wheels.
Okay.
It's encouraging to see, and we're going to continue to build on that success today.
Another conversation piece I'd like to ask about you. What is your organization finding are the key issues for Black Canadians for this upcoming election?
Well, this is part of what the Dinner in Politics series is about. We've got, not to get too technical, but there's a survey that we conduct following these events to get that sort of feedback so that we can share it with federal leaders. We know what it is that we're trying to do. We want to make sure that people who are plugged into our community are able to speak on issues of importance to our community at centers and tables of power, whether it be provincial or federal. And so what we're doing now in the process of having those discussions is somewhat of a listening tour to talk about what people are finding are important issues in their various communities, in various ridings and regions across the country, so that we can take that to policymakers and have them implement an agenda that works for us. And that starts with obviously having people of shared experience in those roles, whether it be as deputy ministers, whether it be as advisors in different members' offices, whether it be as policymakers themselves, members, parliament, provincial parliaments, and our federal parliament in Ottawa. That is going to be the best way to keep a finger on the pulse of people by making sure that we are getting the proper feedback, getting the proper information, and then having people enact what it is that they're hearing at the policymaking table. Representation is key. Obviously, we want to make sure that Black healthcare issues are discussed and prioritized at a high level. Talk about corrections and public safety. Basically, the same sort of issues we talked about with our provincial leaders and our municipal leaders. These are the issues that are generating the most buzz. Making sure that policymakers see us, that they hear us, and that they're attentive to our concerns.
Excellent. Richard, anything? Richard or Sarah, anything
more?
more? We got some more time.
So, in relation to the
sure, go ahead, Richard.
The need for deputy ministers that are Black, we've never had one in the history of this country. We have, as the Black Public Servant group that I'm part of, the Federal Black Employee Caucus, we have really been pushing for presence and change at some of these tables. So it's great to hear that that Operation Black Vote has that on its agenda, because it's on our agenda as well, from a UN decade perspective, from within government. You want to relay that to
them? Richard is just saying that he appreciates, and there's a organization that he represents in Ottawa, Black Federal Public Servants, and they're pushing also to have at least one deputy minister. So he's very happy to hear your organization's push to have the same objective.
Perfect. No, Richard gets it, and I think that's a reflection of the fact that that we share that priority. Uh, as Richard knows, and as many of our board members are aware through their experience in government, that's where a lot of the action takes place. People see their elected officials, but behind the scenes, the folks who are pulling the levers and implementing a lot of those decisions are our deputy ministers. And so, if we are at that table, that will go a long way to making sure that we're effectively represented. And in terms of Richard's work, um, as a community organization, Operation Black Vote Canada has partnered with a number of organizations, not only from the Black community. When we talk about, for instance, we had a public service announcement video. It was a project we worked on with the World Sikh Organization, the Muslim Vote with Tamils in Public Service, talking about the importance of getting involved, talking about the importance of being represented and electing people who share your views, who share your values. When it came to our provincial and municipal debates, we partnered with the Black Health Alliance, with the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists across Canada, just to name a few. So it's not like we're going alone. We're looking for like-minded organizations who share our strategic vision to advance this common goal for our community forward. And we're looking forward to growing. As I said before, we're looking out to Quebec, and there's more to come on that as well. But this is it's a project, and it's going to take all hands on that to make sure that we are getting to where we need to be. But we're getting there. We are.
Yeah.
More stuff, Richard.
With respect to, it's important to have these people in senior government officials because they influence policies that are directed to our people. So one of the other groups that I'm part of, the UN Decade Push Coalition, is working with the current government, federal government, around initiatives that will directly benefit Black Canadians. And this is initiatives coming out of Budget 2019. So my question to Operation Black Vote, are you sharing information with the electorate through your work that explains to people which parties are supporting us directly? Are you being that blunt and engaging, or is it just you're educating people on the process?
So Richard is asking, Ian, does your organization share information with Black Canadians about basically what parties are supporting Black Canadians in a positive light and manner?
Well, that's a great question. I think it's a matter of how we approach it. What we want to facilitate engagement and discussion. And so there are a couple of things, a couple of ways to do that. As each party finalizes their platform in preparation for October's election, we want to go through each party platform, dissect it, review it, and make it accessible for our community based on issues important to us. And then we're going to allow our community, because it's not new to us, to make their own assessments, to make our own judgments based on what it is that we see and what's going to advance us going forward. The mere fact that we're making opportunities available to them to come to us in various capacities means they have to make the pitch. They have to do the work. But what we're seeing for the first time is a concerted effort to come to talk to us about our issues on our terms, on our turf, so that we are able to make those judgments. The days for taking things for granted, policy for granted, and our community for granted are over. And we're going to ensure that going forward, there's a fire lit under each party to say, what are you going to do for our community? What is your vision for the Black community in the province, in our provinces, and coming out of Ottawa? And so that's in part what we're here to do, to be that conduit of information back and forth between the community and to our elected officials, to the various parties, but also to give them an opportunity to come and tell us what it is that they plan to do for us. As I've said before, we have been at the forefront of this country before Confederation. And every major battle, going back to 1812 and prior, we have been there. And so we're not asking for any favors. This is our community's due. And so we are doing what we have to do to provide those opportunities for us to essentially claim our place and stake our claim in government and in politics in our country. And again, just to hit this point again, our board, that's one of the beauties of our board, is that our board has political experience. It's wonderful to have your heart in the right place, and having that passion is a key part for success. But the fact that we all come from government, we come from different parties, means that we understand the language, we understand the realities of how parties operate, and we can leverage that experience to make sure that we're getting effective results on behalf of our community, making sure that the discussion is being geared in the right way, making sure that the requests and our calls to action are ones that can be fulfilled. And then we're going to leave it to them to see what it is that they do. And if they don't engage, well, it's to their detriment, and we're not going to let anybody speak by taking us for granted any longer.
Is the Federation
ahead,
of Black Canadians working with Operation Black Vote Canada on these kinds of initiatives, voter education, and the platform, especially in the area of analyzing the platforms of the different parties for their support of the Black community?
So Ian, Sarah has a question asking, is your organization working with the Federation of Black Canadians?
Well, we've there are a number of organizations from different areas and locales that seek to do work with us, and we're looking for strategic ways and areas to partner. And once you share that general perspective, we're looking for effective ways that are mutually beneficial for us to partner. So we're looking into different ways that we can make sure we're expanding on our strategic vision, looking for ways that we can help for all organizations essentially. Once you share that vision, we'll look for ways to partner, look for ways to work on implementing our shared goals together.
Okay, I have a question, and we're speaking with Ian from Operation Black Vote Canada. Just so we're going to spend a few more minutes with them, and then we're going to have to jump off. But it's been a great conversation so far, getting questions on various platforms. Have another question from Robin Brown on the YouTube platform. He's saying the OB Operation Black Vote Canada's website says that they, quote, conduct outreach with young Black Canadians to inspire and engage them in politics and the political process, unquote. How does Robin's question is, how does your organization do that, and what success have you had?
Okay, wonderful question. And I have to, I think I'll start with our board first of all. We've got some great talent, and everyone brings different strengths to what it is that we do. But we've got a great youth coordinator on our board in Joseph Smith Jr. He's passionate about issues that are affecting young people. He's a young man. He's been engaged in other capacities with our community, with other organizations that he serves on. But he's brought that experience, he's brought that passion, that vigor to Operation Black Vote Canada. And we have a particular focus on the youth element because they will be the future. Whether you can vote now or not, it doesn't matter. At some point, you will reach voting age. We want to make sure we're targeting our young people. We've got the Next Generation Youth Summit, for example. It brings together young people to build their networks, to learn about opportunities to volunteer, to join campaigns, to secure internships. I got my start as an intern. Many people that I know in this business got their starts by volunteering on campaigns. But folks don't always know how to break the ice, essentially, how to get that first start. Our Next Generation Youth Summit is a way to provide information from the parties on how they can join, how they can volunteer, how they can get their start. And it's been effective in the number of people we've seen come out. When we had our youth dinner in politics, that was one of the biggest ones that we had. and this is coming from a generation that's supposed to be apathetic toward politics. I don't think so. When you saw dozens of people taking time in the middle of their week to drive out of their way to come to meet each other, talk about what's important for us as Black youth. Well, I'm in my early 30s, still consider myself Black youth, but for important issues facing our community, we saw the largest one being from our young people. And it's that kind of anecdotal evidence that shows us that we want to be involved, that we understand that we will be the ones to take the reins of power at some point, and that the issues facing communities today will impact us tomorrow. And so we're seeing that success. We're engaged with. We've got a new board member, a new creation on our board called Campus Outreach, and we're very pleased to welcome Trevor in that capacity, making sure we're going out to where young people are in our schools, engaging with them, getting their perspective, making sure we're putting them in front of policymakers to give them their take on issues facing young Black people in Ontario, provinces, and across our country today. So the youth element is a great question. It's important, it's a priority, and it's going to be more of a priority for our group going forward.
Excellent. Anything else anyone like to add? Because we're winding down here, and again, we have to respect Ian's time. He's been so gracious to share with us. Anything else, Sarah,
No, I think
Richard,
good.
you'd like to
It's
ask?
a pleasure having him on the show. It's very informative, and we look forward to directing more people his way and to hear more of the work of Operation Black Vote in our communities here in the National Capital Region and across the country.
When is he coming to Ottawa? Yeah.
And when are you guys going to Ottawa?
Well, we've been to Ottawa. We were in Ottawa a couple of weeks back. I have to check with our coordinator, our schedule coordinator. We do have, I believe, events coming up in the next couple of weeks. But what I would suggest is that folks visit our website, obvc.ca. Email questions to info@obvc.ca. We'll be happy to reach out if you've got an event for us to attend, or for us to spearhead, or you want to partner. Reach out. We'll be more than willing to engage and see what we can do together. Ottawa's going to be a critical part going forward, and you're going to see more of what we have in store in the weeks upcoming. I wanted to take an opportunity to thank you, Dr. Vibe, thank Richard and Sarah for being on and for contributing to a great discussion. For those who are reaching out online, continue to be engaged. This is an important endeavor, and we won't sleep, we won't slumber. We're going to continue to push to make sure that our issues are discussed at the highest levels of our country's politics, because it's important. We've got a voice, we have to use it, and we're going to take our seat at the table going forward because it's something we have to do.
Excellent. And Ian, before we let you leave, I'd like you to share a call to action for Black Canadians when it comes to the next election. What will be your call to action?
Sure. Everybody who is listening, anybody who has a voice in any capacity, we need to be using it to make sure that our community is well represented. Pay attention, dig deep into the issues, look for parties and search out parties and candidates who reflect what it is that you feel is important to us as a community. And above all things, vote, vote, vote. There was a time in our country where we couldn't. We know the struggle of our American friends and neighbors to get the right to vote. We know of the international challenges we've had in other locations and being represented from South Africa to other places throughout the world. We are fortunate to live in one of the greatest countries on the planet. We have to make sure we exercise our franchise at every possible chance, municipally, provincially, federally. We've got people who have contributed so much to that effort. We can't let them down. Vote, 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 be involved, be engaged, and together we can change the complexion of our politics.
Wonderful. That's Ian Allen, Vice Chair, Operation Black Vote Canada. Certainly reach out to him and that organization for anything you want to know about Black Canadian politics and political system. Ian, thanks very much and have a great afternoon. We'll be in touch.
Thank you, Dr. Vibe. Same to you and to all your listeners. Take care.
Be well and keep the faith.
Amen.
Okay, so we have great conversation there with Ian Allen from Operation Black Vote Canada. And it's interesting, on the Get Vocal platform, all our viewers right now are Americans, which I find very interesting. And Galen Bingham, who's a mentor of mine when it comes to leadership, he says, don't take voting for granted. Very powerful. And Bobby from the Get Vocal platform, voting and supporting these candidates is very important. How true, how true. Before we sign off, I want to come back Robin Brown had a question about our first part of our conversation, and I just want to make sure it gets addressed. So before we close out, here are Robin's comments, and he has a question or two. He says the mainstream embraces safe Black heroes like sports stars who never speak out on issues important to our community. How can we increase the profile of activist heroes? And then he also mentions, can you talk about how the mainstream creates and promotes heroes and what the Black community can learn from that?
Yeah. Well,
Now that's a conversation all to itself. I know, and 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 it's interesting just because with the first part of our conversation, it's realized that we have to do a conversation just on media, and that probably be a whole hour and a half just on media. But who would like to take a whirl at that?
So the question about how the mainstream media defines their heroes and what we can learn from that. I think that there's
yes.
I think that we often blindly support the leadership that heroes and leadership figures just because they're on mainstream media. And I think that we should have a little bit more of a critical eye of those leaders that are chosen. I think that it's important for us as Black people to choose our own leaders and our own heroes and who we define as heroes, and to be part of the narrative around constructing that story. Sometimes it seems that um, you know, even our own people are afraid of Malcolm X. I was saying in the beginning, Malcolm X was my hero for growing up, but they're afraid of Malcolm X because mainstream media had portrayed him as this monster that was going to take up arms to shoot up white people and that kind of stuff. When in fact it was the transformed Malcolm X that actually had probably the most impact on American foreign policy and probably what ended up getting killed at the very end because he went to the UN as the international body to engage. So if we don't educate our people on who Black heroes really are, then sometimes we end up supporting people who are not what I would consider to be people that are in our best collective interest as people.
Yeah. So, for example, on my show, I dare to to bring up President Obama's administration's role in what is happening right now in Libya and the surrounding countries, and how taking out, Muammar Gaddafi completely sort of it sort of blew up a hornet's nest and caused irreparable damage. He did when he came to Ottawa. He did sort of allude to that as one of his regrets. The thing is, even in our own, Richard was talking about, challenging our own quote unquote heroes who are promoted as heroes in the mainstream. Someone like a figure like Obama still somewhat remains, untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, myself, because I am a continental African, I happen to come from Kenya. I'm the same tribe as President Obama's country. I'm going to use all of that to demand accountability and to not just say, oh, he was wonderful and he was this transformative figure, transformative negatively in some parts of the African continent. So we have to be open-minded enough, critical enough, as Richard said, to make the mainstream manufactured heroes accountable for everything that they do in their position of power. And again, community media, hello, like that's also what our role is. I'm going to toot our horn every chance I get, because that's where we should step in, because we're not beholden to corporate powers that be, like mainstream, a lot of the mainstream outlets.
Good final words emphasizing the importance of community radio and community media. Forget radio, community media. Community media. As I say these days, one of the hashtags I'm using very often these days is hashtag shift culture. So that's what we need to do. Well, we have come to another end of an epic conversation. These just keep on getting better and better, and the Unpacked Cross Country conversation series will continue. I'd like to first thank Sarah for
Oui.
stepping in, and I hope we see you back again. And Richard, thank you again for taking time out of your very positive, productive schedule. Both of you have positive, productive schedules to share with us. Any final words you'd like to give, Richard, about
Just very
Unpad,
quickly,
etc.,
we
before we
continue to
close
make
out?
historic gains as it pertains to the UN decade for people of African descent. Work with the government in this case, in one small case here, uh, I'm part of a UN decade push coalition that has been successful in working with the Department of Employment and Social Development to secure $25 million of funding for Black communities. There's going to be a session on the 23rd. Some select organizations that will be part of helping to make sure those resources flow into the community before the election. There'll be an important conversation tomorrow that some of the listeners may be part of if they are connected to some of the organizations that will be coming on the 23rd. So that's really great. We continue to make progress until someone says stop. We're going to be still making gains for our people. So it's fun times and very exciting times. And it's all good. Thanks. And again, thanks, Dr. Vibe,
Thank
for creating
you
this
very
opportunity
much.
for us to speak
Yeah.
and tell some of our stories.
The pleasure is mine. I also want to thank BIA Media out of Ottawa for making it happen on their end and providing the space for the conversation and hosting Sarah and Richard. I am Dr. Vibe, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe show. If you want to catch out more of my epic conversations, just go to drvibeshow.com. I want to thank everyone who jumped on via the various platforms on Get Vocal, Free for Real, Galen Bingham, Big Bad Brad, Bobby, Tony. We also had Dre, who was on earlier on. Shannon, I'd like to say thanks for stopping on. And also Herbie. Also thanks to Herbie for sharing it out to his Twitter family. And on Periscope, I just want to see who we are. We had a bunch of people on Periscope. I'm not going to get to them right now. And thanks to you for taking the time out. Our next conversation, heads up, is going to be on August 11th, and that is going to be with Doug Mintor. Mr. Mintor, at one time, was the director of small business development for the Knoxville Chamber of Commerce. He is now on the board of the Canadian Black Chamber of Commerce, and he's going to be talking about Black Canadian Renaissance. So, and he's just become a permanent resident of Canada. Here we're going to have a African American talking about all the opportunities he sees for Black Canada. Please make sure you catch the conversation August 11th, 2 p.m. Follow me and you'll get all the information on that next conversation. Like to say, as always, you're blessed and highly favored. You're a magnet for miracles. You're a solution for someone's problem. God bless. Peace well. Keep the faith. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks for watching. Goodbye, everybody.